Today I'd like to talk to you about photography portfolios. What exactly is a portfolio? When you think about portfolios, do you think of it as being like your greatest hits, your very best work you've ever done throughout your entire career? Kind of like these greatest hits album covers? You'll notice that a lot of these greatest hits only come later in somebody's career, and we want to talk about what does a portfolio mean today and why do you need one? To begin with, a portfolio is a continuous process of building bodies of work to show people what you do. There is no one perfect portfolio. A portfolio is a collection of work that adheres to a theme, a uniform design. It's a cohesive body of work that is at that extra level of quality. Your portfolio is also an important part of your branding and your brand experience because what it is what's known as a brand proof point. It establishes the value of your work by proving that you're capable of doing excellent quality. I think one of the most important facets of portfolio development is that the portfolio should tell you who your target market is, who's your ideal client, because your work needs to solve a problem. Your work needs to fulfill some need or take care of some problem that your client has. So I think often about what Buckminster Fuller said, which was that the universe doesn't owe me a living. And in fact, even though I may love what I do, the work I do isn't just for me. It has to solve some problem for a potential client. The advantage of having a cohesive body of work that tells you who your target market is once you know who your target market is, you know who you need to talk to and who you need to get your portfolio in front of, who you need to ask for work. And so I think one of the most important facets of putting a portfolio together is you're telling yourself, who is my target market? Who do I need to talk to? There is no one perfect portfolio. We use lots of different portfolios. I think one of the most important portfolios I work with every day is my cell phone. I keep an album of photos to be able to show somebody exactly what I'm doing. I think having a portfolio on you at all times is extremely valuable. It helps you be able to explain who you are and what you're doing and why you're doing it to anybody that comes up and asks you. We are often photographing in public, and it's a great opportunity to start a conversation. So I keep a portfolio on my cell phone. We have lots of different portfolios ranging from some inexpensive publications. These are soft cover magazine type portfolios that I can show a client what my work's about very affordably. I can actually mail that to them as a inexpensive way to show my work. A smaller publication that I've published in the past that shows different images. It could be something as informal as a spiral bound notebook. This would be more for like a business proposal sort of presentation. Here's a spiral bound portfolio that I put together for gallery proposals, and it contains a body of work and it contains an artist statement, and it's very inexpensive to publish and be able to send out. So if I'm going to be mailing portfolios for people that I'm not going to expect to get it back, I might do something inexpensive like that. Here's a coffee table book that's a hardbound. It's got a graphic on the cover, and again, it's just one of the things I like about books is that I can sequence the images side by side and create an interesting meaning with the sequencing of those images. So you can see a way to build a narrative into a portfolio by using a book. Here's that same portfolio presented in a screw post, 3 screw post portfolio. What this allows me to do is get the absolute best print quality for reproduction purposes and put my best foot forward with my portfolio there. And then finally, here's the classic portfolio case, which I don't use very often, as you can tell, it's so dusty. But this is where we would put mounted prints, matted prints in that sort of portfolio as well. Here's a matted print from a portfolio, and these often turn into gallery exhibitions. The kind of portfolios I really want to talk to you about today, though, really involve setting up your digital studio. And so some of the portfolios we work with in the digital environment include being able to work with a tablet computer or a cell phone or desktop computer. Here's a portfolio that I showed you earlier, that New York book, where it actually behaves just like a book, and you can see that I'm able to play with design. I can have full bleed spreads. I can have images side by side that kind of build that story. What I like about this digital portfolio is, first of all, it's very inexpensive put together, and second of all, it allows the tactile, being able to zoom in and out, that gives a similar feel to if they were handling a physical portfolio, to where we can see the additional details into the image. Here's a body of work that I actually had sold as a book that combined my images with some of my favorite inspirational quotes. And what I like about the digital portfolio like this is it still has that tactile feel where the viewer can zoom in and look at the details of my photograph, and it still behaves very much like a physical portfolio as well. So what we're going to really focus on is how do we build digital portfolios that help us show our work in the best light, and more importantly, help us define what kind of photography we do and who is our target market. So here I am in my cell phone portfolio, and here's an album I've created called Portraits by Ira, and you can see that this has a very much a commercial portrait feel, that I know who I'm going to sell. Predominantly senior portraits would be this marketplace here. Here we are looking at one of my websites. This particular website is for my editorial work, travel, documentary style photography. It's mostly monochrome. And so the front page is a large slideshow portfolio. Your website is essentially your online studio. And so within that studio space, we can organize multiple portfolios. So here is a portfolio of black and white portraits, which are based on this idea of chiaroscuro, where these images have a intense light and dark value to them. And this is what we're going to talk about in terms of developing rules for what those different images must look like to fit into a portfolio. So that's one portfolio. Here's another portfolio of tintype portraits. Again, it's very straightforward in that we know exactly what the rules for these tintype portraits is. It's ruled by a particular process, particular lighting scenario as well. They have a particular look to it. Then it gets a little bit more tricky in that with my color photography, for travel photography, it's more of a lifestyle portfolio, and so you're going to see a wide variety of images that might go in multiple portfolios, but somehow I've got to bring them cohesively together through some sort of unifying progression of imagery, and so that would be one place to look. I recommend a good place to start analyzing what are your rules for your images is to look at your social media. We post to our social media pages on a daily basis. I recommend you post to your blog on a weekly basis. And what you'll notice over time is building a portfolio is a process of simply shooting, sharing, and then ultimately organization. What we're ultimately doing to build a portfolio is we're organizing our work, and we're putting elements that go together into collections. As I look through my blog over the last month, I see certain things that stand out. And if I look at some older posts as well, what's really fascinating to me is how you'll see certain color harmonies that stand out that tell me something about what my eye is drawn to and subject matter. here you can see the sharing of shapes between what looks like a sucker that looks like the Earth from space to the shape of this person's head here. That happens to be my mother in a photo shoot. You'll see that there are periods of time where you're focused on different styles and looks to your work. And you'll even notice this image here, looking up, kind of became a repeating theme as well. And that could become a rule for a collection of work. Just call it looking up. So I like to look through my social media posts to see if there's any patterns to that work. And then what I do is I go into Lightroom or Bridge, whatever catalog that you're working with, and I'm going to build a series of collections that are organized by the style of work or by these collections. And so the process for me in building a portfolio is to combine the images together and then take them to the next step, which is to do the retouching that we want done on our images to make it to the very best quality they can be. But one of the things I want to assure you about being a photographer is that we can have lots of different collections. Here's some editorial work, travel photography editorial. I've got lots of options in here. So here's a project that I did for a music school, and that becomes its own body of work. And we can see how that turns out. Here's another project that I did of a portrait shoot, and that becomes its own body of work as well. And what I could do is then take these images that I think represent my favorites from this photo shoot. We can organize portfolios a lot of different ways, and this is where I talk about we don't want to think of it as putting ourselves in a box. Rather, I want you to think about it as building multiple boxes, building the compartments that store the images, and that you select these images based upon the rules of that box. So here's a body of work that actually was just a single photo shoot that started the idea of pursuing this no-tan, these stark black and white images of nature. And so you can see that I've selected images that have this certain quality to it. In fact, here, let's take a look at it without the distraction, and you can see this idea of light and dark values. So that's one collection here. Here are a bunch of images that I selected from my blog, and you'll notice that there's a similar color harmony going on here. These are some portraits I did of some international students. International guests stayed in our home. And then also in the autumn, I was really paying attention to the color orange. And you'll see it over and over in this body of work. I referred to it earlier about the similar shapes as well. So that becomes a way of starting to identify those boxes that you're building for yourself. Here's kind of more the editorial storytelling imagery and this idea of the gesture or the expression telling a story. And so I've accumulated some of these travel images that look at a particular feeling, mood to those particular images. And you can use an image in multiple boxes, but the box has to be cohesive, and that's really what the portfolio is about. So my recommendation for you is to go through and let's just take some of these images here, and I'm just going to very quickly show you. Let's go back to Lightroom. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my print module, and I've created a template in my print module. Now I'm actually going to modify this template a little bit because I want to optimize it for my cell phone. And so what I'm going to do is go to my page setup, and I'm going to set this to a legal size horizontal. Okay, I got my nameplate here that I need to turn the rotation off. I need to adjust my grid, and I'm going to make it a square. Actually, let me keep it square. and I'm going to move my logo down, and I'm going to put it in the middle of the frame just because it's a little easier to make sure it stays in the same spot. And what I'm doing is I'm just branding my work before I put it on my cell phone, and I'll just go ahead and check on it here. That looks pretty good. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this as a template in Lightroom. So I'm just going to very quickly create a new template here, and I'm just going to call this cell phone portfolio branding, whatever you want to call it. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is select all my images and go print to file. And I'm going to go into my computer, create a new folder, and I'm just going to call this my Notan test folio for the heck of it. And I'll just name and you can see right up here it's exporting that because I have the printer set to, if you look down here, you'll see I have the printer set to print to file. You'll see up here the progress of printing that. And now I'll go to my Google Photos right here, and I'm going to say upload, and I'm going to go and find that folder we created. There's the folder we created, and there's the images right there. I'll open that up. I'm going to add this to an album, and I'll go ahead and just call this Notan Studies Folio, whatever I want to call it. And I'll check that as done, and now my portfolio is there, vertical and horizontal, and most importantly, we will automatically have this uploaded to my cell phone. The album is already on my cell phone, and now you'll see the vertical, the horizontal in here. I'll turn this horizontal. Look at how this creates an experience that I can zoom in and see the details of it, and it was automatically put on my phone by syncing it to Google Photos. So that's a really nice feature that we have available to us. What I like about Google Photos is the fact that it offers unlimited free storage of images. It does limit the file size to 16 megapixel, but that's plenty for a portfolio. And what I really love is I can also share photos with clients in a way that they're very familiar with. And so if I create a shared album, put some photos in there, and give that permission to the client to download them, I'm able to deliver products to my clients very, very quickly in a way that they're used to. But we're going to talk more about the business processes in another class. So let's do that one more time. I'm going to go back into Lightroom, and now that I've got this new template, you can see that I've got my previous template available, and I like to use this template for my blog because typically that's in a limited screen area on the page. But now I've got this new template I created, and so I'm going to go into my library again, and I'm going to go to my Retouch Portraits. So I'm going to go back to my library. I'm going to pull this other selection of portrait portfolio that I put together. I'm going to go to the print module. You'll see it's already there. I actually think I could probably bring this up a little bit. Let's see how that looks with the verticals where it starts. Yeah, that's where I get into trouble. So I'll go ahead and bring that back a little. Bring it right to the edge. That'll work. Okay. And in fact, maybe I'll shrink this down a little bit because I want it to be a little bit bigger. And that works pretty well. So I can live with that. So I better save that adjustment to that template. So I'm just going to call that cell phone template updated, and I can rename that later, but I just want to give it a unique name, so I save it. And I'm going to go ahead and just select all. I'll print to file, Go back to my pictures, and I'm just going to call this updated portrait portfolio. And just for consistency's sake, I'll capitalize that. And I'll call this Portraits by Ira to give the group name. Up here you will see the progress. And just so you know, when you're down in the print module, you want to make sure you just go down to print to, and you can toggle between printer or JPEG file. I set mine to 150 pixels per inch when I'm printing to a JPEG, so it allows the person to zoom in a little bit but not have enough detail that they're going to be able to make enlarged prints from my files in case they get a hold of them somehow. So it's a balance, and it also makes uploading to the web a little faster. I'll go back to my Google Photos. I'm going to go to Upload, and there's the new portfolio. Upload it. Here it's updated. I'm going to say please add this to an album, and I'll add it to a new album. And I'm going to try something. I'm going to say 01 portrait portfolio. I think by doing that I should be able to have that show up on the top of the list on my phone. So that's already on the phone. I'm going to go ahead and just go back in here, and sure enough, look at that. It put the portfolio in the top list. So that's one of the ways we can add a priority so it's always easy to find that portfolio. There's the portfolio. Here I'll click on the first image, and as you can see here, I'm able to scroll in. Again, I can zoom in, see some details as well, and it's a way to create some branding to my work and have it available at any time. So that is our first step towards building a portfolio, is building our boxes by forming some image rules about our work, what kind of genre, what kind of location, maybe if it's a place-based portfolio, or whether it's some special medium like the tintype portraits, or whether it is a particular gesture or movement or color. Any of those things can become effective portfolios for you.